Financially raw, real, authentic wisdom with Lourens Oberholzer from Retire Rich and Happy.
Welcome to Financially Raw, this 10 a.m. on a Thursday. This is our second show, and I'm looking forward to spending some time with you this morning discussing how to win at the game of money. So what we are going to talk about today is we are going to talk about why it is important to get somebody to coach you or to mentor you in your journey to become financially successful and to win at the game of money. So if you have any questions or you want to make any comments, you are welcome to give us a shout out on the website. Looking forward to hearing from you guys. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. You're also welcome to visit our website, www.retirerichandhappy.co.za. Follow us on Facebook, Retire Rich and Happy, and then also you can follow our on YouTube as well. So yes, thank you very much for joining me, and let's chat a little bit about why it's so important to have somebody to mentor you and coach you. And then I will also share with you a little bit about how the coaching process works when one of our coaches work with you to get you to financial independence and to get you to retire rich and happy. So we come from an education system, and I think all of the listeners that's listening to me at the moment can relate to this. We come from an education system that for generations have taught us how to become good employees. The education system is built to create an employee army for corporations to get employees that can work for them. But it doesn't teach us what to do with the money once we've earned it. So what typically happens is we go into life, and the attitude that we have is that, don't worry, you'll pick it up as you go along. Because we look at our parents that's supposed to instill into us some of the principles of financial management. And a lot of our parents, I know my parents, didn't have any financial education either. So they teach us what they can, but they also were never taught the rules of the game. So we go into this life, this world, this adult life of managing our money. We get to age 40, we battered, we bruised, our expenses are higher than our incomes, we barely making it from a month-to-month basis. And every time it feels like we are on our way to achieving something happens. Somebody gets sick, the car breaks down, the tire bursts, something goes wrong in the house, and every time we take a few steps forward, we end up taking a few steps back. So it is important that we get a strategy and we get our financial education and our financial intelligence increased so that we can learn the rules of the game of money. Because money, like anything else, is a game. And the problem is, if we don't know the rules of the game, it's not going to take very long before we lose at this game. The example I always use is if we play Monopoly, and I know most of you have played Monopoly in your life at least once or twice. If we get 4 people sitting around a table, and 3 of those 4 people have played Monopoly many times in their life already, and they know the rules, they know the strategies, and one of those people have never played Monopoly ever, and they don't teach him the rules of the game, how long do you think it's going to take before that person is bankrupt? And I think you'll agree with me that it's not going to take that long before that person is bankrupt. So what is important is that even if that person is clever and he starts picking up on the rules, and he starts realizing that you have to buy properties and you have to convert them to hotels, etc., by the time he realizes it, he's going to be too far behind the 8 ball and he's never going to catch up. And that's typically how we feel through life. When we get to age 40, we get to 45, or even in our 30s, we start realizing that it feels like we're the only guys who haven't caught up yet, who doesn't have a proper strategy, and we don't really know exactly what we are supposed to do and where we are supposed to start. And That's why you need to get somebody to guide you. You need to get somebody to show you the strategy. Because you've got one of two choices. You can go and try and figure this out for yourself and go and read books, educate yourself. And I'm not saying don't educate yourself. You should do that as well. But it might take you months to years to learn all of these strategies on your own. Where if you get a mentor who's already done this, who's already created this wealth for themselves and already have a strategy, then it cuts out all that time that it was going to take you to figure these things out for yourself. So it is extremely important that you find a mentor. Let's look at sport. If you look at any sport, a tennis player, rugby team, soccer, one of the most important people in that team is the coach. Because without a good coach, the greatest players cannot reach their full potential. So if you want to win at this game, like if you would want to win at a game of rugby or a tennis or whatever game you want to play, you need a good coach. So let's talk a little bit about getting a financial coach. So the first thing you want to do is when you're looking for a good coach, you want somebody who's actually taken the journey themselves. So often we take financial advice from people who aren't financially successful or have a financial strategy themselves. Because it's very easy for people to give other people advice but not take that advice themselves. So when you do get a coach or you do get a mentor, go and get somebody who actually walks the walk. And actually does what they teach you, and you can see that it's worked for them. So that is very important. So when we do coaching with students, we have 4 levels of coaching. So first and foremost, we give people a personal financial coach, and that person is there to guide you, to take you by the hand, keep you accountable, be there to give advice whenever you need that advice, that guidance. So that person is there with you. You can voice note them 24 hours a day. They will give you an answer. And sometimes it's good to just have somebody that you can run an idea by, that just has a different point of view, of a different perspective on what's going on. So we've got 4 levels of coaching we take our students through. The first level is called the student level. So each of these 4 levels has a goal. This is what we are working towards achieving. It's got an outcome. So that is what we want to achieve as an outcome. And then it's got an education area that we teach our students on that level. So if you look at student level, let's talk about the education first. On student level, the education area we focus on is increasing your financial intelligence. So that is the basics. Those are things like, how do you use a credit card? How does the interest on a bond work? What is the difference between term life insurance and whole of life insurance? Well, how does a retirement annuity work, and what's the tax benefits of that? How should you budget? What is the strategies that you need when budgeting? All of those things that seems to be so simple, and it seems to be things that we should know. A lot of us don't actually know how these things work. So we focus on increasing your financial intelligence by teaching you the basics of the foundation. The goal for student level is to move your zero back to zero. So that sounds very cryptic if I say that. So let's quickly explain. And it's a little bit difficult when I'm talking on radio, because I'm a very visual person. So I draw a lot of pictures. And if you ever watch the video podcast of the show, you'll see my hands go all over the place while I'm talking. But what happens is, as we go through life, when we start working, our zero is zero. What that means is, if we have zero money in the bank, we have zero money to spend. You cannot spend less than zero. So what then happens is we start earning and spending all around that zero. We earn some money, our bank account goes up, and then we spend money all the way down to zero, and we can't go below zero. Then the bank comes and they tell us that we are a good client, we've managed our account well, and we now qualify for the added security of a credit card. And we are very happy and excited because that now means we are an adult and we can now have a credit card. And we promise ourselves that we're not going to spend anything on that credit card unless it's an absolute emergency. And then we all know what happens next. A couple of months later, our credit card is sitting at minus 10,000 Rand or minus 8,000 Rand. And then suddenly we start earning and spending all around minus 10,000 Rand. And we then tell ourselves that it's not too bad because every month we are clearing our credit card. So in effect, we don't have credit card debt because every month we end on zero again. But we're now on the wrong side of the zero. So our zero is no longer our zero. The bank moved your zero from 0 to minus 10,000, minus 20. And over time, that escalates. It becomes worse and worse and worse. Minus 10 becomes minus 20, becomes minus 50, 100, 200, and wherever we find ourselves. So the first thing we need to do is we need to get your zero back to zero. You need to work on moving that zero back to zero. So when you have no more money to spend, you have no more of your own money to spend, not the bank's money. Because the moment your zero gets moved, the bank starts earning money on everything that you do. So they want you to move your zero further and further away to the negative side. Now, here's the thing. A lot of people I see, they're starting to put money into a retirement annuity. They put money into savings. 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 Rand a month gets put into savings. And on that investment of theirs, they're getting 4 or 5% return after cost. But then they have a personal loan, they have a credit card, they have a revolving credit where they're paying 6,000 Rand a month and they're paying 22% interest. So just think of that analogy. On the one side, you are earning 4%. On the other side, you are paying 22%. That does not make sense. Why are you paying 22% and only earning 4%? So what we do here is we make sure that you take all the positive cash flow that you have and put it towards getting rid of that unsecured debt so that we can get that drain on your cash flow removed out of your financial system. So what the coach does on this level is they do what they call a strategic expense planning, which is an expense tracking system, and help you to create a proper budget and cash flow management system. At iRetire, we've created a unique cash flow management system called variable cost segregation. If you want to, the easy term to remember is the bucket system. And that system is specifically developed to help people get complete control over their monthly cash flow. So no longer will you not know how much money you are spending, because we create a system that helps you be aware of what you're spending, exactly where your money is going, and you become in control of where your money is going. I so often see this when we talk to new students. People do budgeting, and most of us think that budgeting is a predictor of the future. We sit in the beginning of the month, we write down our expenses for the month, our income for the month, and we say, well, this is going to be an okay month, I will be fine. Because we're looking to the future. And then by the 20th, the money's gone, we start dipping into our credit cards, our savings, etc., etc. And then we don't know where the money's gone. And then we start telling ourselves, geez, I can't work with money. I don't have the discipline to work with money. But it's actually not a discipline issue. It's an awareness and a systems issue. We don't have a proper system to help us with our cash flow management. Here's one of the rules we teach people is we teach people that you need to give every rand a job. You need to make sure that the money that you're getting in is spent wisely, because it's a finite resource. And only if you can control that resource when it's small will you be able to control that resource as it grows. So how we tend to try and fix our cash flow management problems is by trying to generate more revenue. We start a part-time business. We go for that next promotion. We find another job with another company that pays a little bit more. But we very soon realize that the extra money that we're getting in is not really helping us to improve our cash flow situation, because it's just extra money, and very quickly our expenses increase and it just swallows up that extra money. Research shows that on average, within 2 months, a raise that you get from work is swallowed up by expenses. Within 2 months, you got used to that raise, and it doesn't mean anything in your life anymore. So budgeting is crucially important. Now, budgeting is 80% looking backwards first, and only 20% looking forward. And this is one of the things we teach people, and your coach or a coach will help you do. By really looking at where your money's gone in the past, can you only determine where you're going to send your money or spend your money in the future. And that is what we call our strategic expense planning exercise. Here's some statistics. About 70 to 75% of people have no budget. People don't budget at all. Then about 25 to 30% of people have a basic budget. And only about 3 to 5% of people have an in-depth budget that not only looks at their basic expenses, but looks at unforeseen expenses and prepare for that as well. And it's no surprise that those 3 to 5% have more financial security than the other 95% combined. So what happens on student level is we take control of your cash flow, we increase your financial intelligence, and from there we make sure that we move your zero back to zero. Because your whole idea behind your budget will be to create a positive cash flow. Here's the thing, guys. You need to start looking at your personal finance as if you were a business. What is the purpose of any business? The purpose of a business is to create a profit, create a positive cash flow. And that's how you need to start looking at your personal finance as well. Because in effect, you are a business. Even if you work for a company, you are selling yourself. You are the product that your business is selling. You are selling your time and money to the company for a specific amount of money. So you need to take that business that is you and make that business profitable. And the only way to do that is by really looking at your expenses first. And one of the tips I can give you guys here is embrace your true expenses. It's so easy for us to bullshit ourselves. We look at things and we say, I'm only spending probably about 1,000 Rand a month on eating out and takeaways. It's only about 3,000 Rand for groceries. And we bullshit ourselves. It's so easy. But what happens is, if you really start looking at your expenses, really embrace your true expenses, then only can you change. You can't work with assumptions and averages. And that's something we're very afraid of, because we're afraid of getting judged. We're afraid of judging ourselves. And that's why we don't want to look at our expenses. We're scared of what the picture is going to look like if we really honestly have a look at our cash flow. And how I explain it to people is, if you look at a movie, a horror movie, the monster in the horror movie is usually most scary when you don't see the monster. When it's running around in the shadows, you hear the sounds, it flashes across the screen. That is where most of the fear comes from. The moment, most times, when that monster is eventually revealed in the film, it is not as scary as you thought it was. And that's what happens when we start looking at our finances. You need somebody that has no emotional attachment to your financial situation to help you objectively look at your financial situation and your cash flow. And they can give you objective advice on getting rid of your unsecured debt and taking control of your cash flow. Only once we've done that do you move to the next level of the system. Another message from Warren. And I know this Warren. It says, "Hi Lourens, I still look back to that first Financial Freedom Forum as the day my financial life turned around. But I will say, having heard you speak many times, it's always great to hear it again, to either reaffirm or maybe pick up something I might not have taken notice of before. as I financially progress. Thanks again for everything you have done for me and my family. Warren, yes, we'll still one day explain or tell people about that first forum and what an interesting experience it was. But it is so humbling to hear the difference we've made in your financial life. And thanks for always supporting us and never being shy to share what you have experienced by being part of our coaching and being part of our company in your personal life. Thanks for that. Jessica says, hi Lourens, if I receive an inheritance and pay off all my debt with it, do I have to pay tax on the inheritance and the balance after paying off the debt? So, Jessica, no. In inheritance, if it's a cash inheritance, there will be no tax payable on that. So you can use that inheritance to pay off your debt. Again, it's very difficult to really say it's the right thing or the wrong thing to do with the inheritance money. I always suggest you speak to a financial advisor or one of the coaches to really look at your whole situation and then give you the correct advice. So yeah, it is definitely not taxable, so you can take that money and pay off the debt. So what happens in that estate, if there's any estate duty or taxes with a transfer of properties, property tax, etc., that will already be paid through the estate before you receive your inheritance. So I hope that answers that question. Okay, guys, so once we've done the moving the zero back to zero, you then get moved to undergraduate level. So the goal for undergraduate level is to reach your maximum reserve level, and I'll explain what maximum reserve is now. The outcome is to create financial security, and the education area is to increase your entrepreneurial intelligence. So let's look at the education area again first, increasing your entrepreneurial intelligence. So on this level, we start focusing on helping you start thinking like an entrepreneur. A lot of people have the completely wrong idea of what an entrepreneur is. They think an entrepreneur is the same as being a business owner, and it's not necessarily the same thing. An entrepreneur is somebody that creates and focuses on creating business assets that generate multiple sources of income through leverage. So what typically happens when people decide to start a part-time business, they do it at the wrong time and they ask the wrong question. They do it when they need the money. And that's why on student level, we don't immediately start trying to increase your revenue. We first make sure that you have complete control over your cash flow. Because once you start a business because you need the money, the reasons in starting the business is wrong. Because that means you don't have control of your cash flow at the moment. So any extra money that you earn will just go into that black hole of expenses, and it's not going to move you forward. One of the things we also teach people is that every income that you receive has to be defined as either being a lifestyle income or being a freedom income. If it's a lifestyle income, it goes into your lifestyle account and it is used to fund your lifestyle, whatever you want that lifestyle to be. It pays for the house, the cars, the school fees, the clothing, the medical aid, all of those expenses. If it is a freedom income, what then happens is it has to be parked somewhere else so that money can start working for you. Now, the first place we go and park that extra income is in your reserve account. So the goal here is to create, or the outcome is to create financial security. So if we look at the student level, the outcome was create financial stability. What is financial stability? It is having complete control over where your money comes from, where it is being spent, and having a positive cash flow at the end of the month. Financial security is where you become your own security. You make sure that your financial situation is secure. That doesn't matter what happens to you. Your life and your dependents' lives can continue in the same manner as you're used to. And that is where we set up your reserve account. Your reserve account is a no-cost or a low-cost savings account where all the positive cash flow that you have every month after paying off all your debt then gets moved. So if you think back on the example I used about the person paying 4,000 Rand a month on his investments and paying 6,000 Rand a month on his debt. Once he's paid off that 6,000 Rand on debt, that 6,000 Rand cash flow can then be moved to your reserve account to create financial security. So once we have set up your reserve account, we then set, or your coach helps you to set your maximum reserve level. So they do a calculation on exactly how much money you need in that reserve account to have financial security. So that maximum reserve level is built up of two separate values. The first value is your emergency fund, which is typically 3 times your monthly expenses. And secondly, it is your total capital expenditure for the year that's on its way, for the next year. So capital expenditures, all those expenses that we usually don't budget for. It's those things like the car needs to be serviced, the holidays, the birthdays, the anniversaries, the Christmas presents. So what typically happens with us is we don't plan for it. Our budget is so tight that when these once-off expenses happen, we typically either put it on a personal loan, a revolving credit, our overdraft, or on our credit card. And that's how we slowly start getting deeper and deeper into debt. I always say to people, we tend to think that we get into debt with one event that happens. Somebody gets ill and now you have 150,000 rands worth of medical bills. Now you're in debt. But in reality, that's not how it works. In reality, we get into debt slowly over time. It's 5,000 Rand here, 1,000 Rand there, 10,000 Rand there. And before we know it, we have 200,000 Rands worth of unsecured debt. So it slowly creeps up on us. So what happens with the reserve account is, if anything happens, if you lose your ability to earn an income for a month or two, you have money in your reserve account to fund you. So you become your own bank. You don't need to go to a bank for a personal loan if something goes wrong, because you know exactly that you have your own financial security. So what typically happens is a lot of people have some money put away for a rainy day, but because they don't know exactly how much money is enough in that rainy day fund, what tends to happen is we start building it, something goes wrong and it goes to zero, and then we build it up again and it goes to zero because we don't have a specific goal. What your coach will help you with is to give you a specific goal to the rand that you're going to have to get into that reserve account. And because of the awareness of that specific goal, your probability of achieving it is much higher. So your coach will then work with you to build your reserve account to get you to financial security. Once we get to financial security, you are ready to move to the graduate level. The graduate level is where we start to create financial gain. So that is the outcome of graduate level, is create financial gain. You are now going to start building 2 new types of assets. The first type of asset you're going to start building is business assets. So at graduate level, we're then going to guide you to become an entrepreneur, to start creating multiple sources of income that can be defined as freedom income, and start building a capital asset. And that's the second kind of asset. It's capital assets. So your positive cash flow that comes from your reserve account, plus then your income coming from your entrepreneurial venture, will both go into what we call your free bucks account. And that free bucks account, it creates a capital asset where that money builds up to a certain level so that you can start investing into income generating assets. So on this level also, the education area is to increase your investment intelligence. So here we're going to start teaching you the different kinds of investments. What's the difference between a retirement annuity and an annuity? What is the difference between a living annuity and a life annuity? How does a unit trust work against an exchange traded fund or an index fund? How does a tax-free savings plan work, and is it worth using that? Is it worth still putting money into a retirement annuity and use these structured products? And the whole idea here is to increase your financial intelligence to such an extent that we move you from being a passive investor to becoming an active investor. Because here's the thing. Again, we have been conditioned for generations to be passively involved in our own financial and retirement plans. We get a broker, we get the person from HR at the company that sits with us, or a financial advisor, somebody at the bank. They sit with us, they tell us what we should do. It sounds good while we're sitting there. We sign the form, and every month they come into our bank account and they just take money out of our bank account. And we then hope to hell that they actually do something with this money, that it's actually going to be enough. And we don't really have an idea of where this money is going or what's happening with it. And more often than not, by the time we get to retirement age, we then look at it and it hasn't achieved what they promised us. And then we are in trouble. The problem with that is then most people then look at it and they blame everybody around them. They blame the insurance company. They blame the broker. They blame the person at the bank. Where actually they only have themselves to blame. Because you need to become actively involved in your own financial future. Nobody's going to do it for you except you. So you need to become an active investor where you have the knowledge, and I'm not saying become a financial advisor yourself, but have the knowledge so that when you are approached with structured products or with other kinds of investments, you can make a informed decision and actually decide on the information at hand what the right thing for you is. So once we've set up your FreeBucks account, which is a flexible investment account where you go park the funds until you are ready to go to the next level, your coach will help you determine what your investment level needs to be. Now, how they do that is through your investment intelligence. They will determine with you what ideal investments you are comfortable in investing in. Once they have determined what your ideal investment is, looking at your risk profile, what you are willing to risk, what kind of returns you're looking at, what the time frame is, etc., they will determine how much capital you would need to make your first investment. And once they've determined that with you, that becomes your investment level. And we start filling up this FreeBucks account of yours until we get to that investment level. Once you reach that investment level, you are ready for the final stage in the coaching. And you want to get to this level as quickly as possible and stay here for as long as possible, because this is where you want to be for the rest of your life. You want to be an investor for the rest of your life. So you want to become an investor. So what happens under investor? What is the education area? The education area we focus on investor level is to increase your emotional intelligence. Now I know that sounds sort of silly, but when you get to this level, you need to start thinking like a wealthy person. You cannot think the same way that a middle class or a poor person will think. So your mindset needs to change, because wherever the mind goes, the body will follow. If you don't improve the way that you think about and your relationship with your wealth, you will always go back to what you are comfortable with. You want to get to investor level as quickly as possible, and you want to start thinking like a wealthy person, because the way the wealthy think about money is completely different than what the middle class do. How many times do we hear about somebody winning the lottery and making a lot of money through that, and then 6 months later they're in a worse financial situation than they were before they won the lottery? It's because although their bank balance changed, their mindset hasn't changed. So emotional intelligence is very, very important. The goal we're working towards here is to reach breakout point. Now, breakout point is where you can financially retire. And this is how we teach people to rethink the definition of retirement. The definition of retirement shouldn't be the day that you stop working. It should be the day that you work because you want to work, not because you have to work anymore. And that is your breakout point, where your income from your assets are equal or more than the income you get from your job or your primary business. That is what you're aiming towards, because the moment you get there, you are free. And then the outcome we're looking for here is to create financial abundance. And just think about it. I don't think there's a lot of people out there that says that they don't want financial abundance. They'd rather be struggling. And financial abundance doesn't have to be the same thing for everybody. Elon Musk's idea of financial abundance is definitely not the same as my idea of financial abundance. So whatever that means to you, that is what we want to achieve with Investor Level. So what do we do in this level? You've now built up some capital assets in your FreeBucks account. We then take that capital and we invest it into an income generating asset. And the core about an income generating asset is it should be an asset that generates an income as a result of the asset, not what you do in the asset. So you should be investing in something that will give you an income, preferably monthly, at most quarterly, so that money can then create more capital assets. So a lot of people invest in property because property is the most well-known income generating asset that people think of. Because the moment people think of an income generating asset, they think about buying a second property, renting it out and getting the rental income. But the mistake people make is that they invest in a property and that property is actually costing them 3,000 or 4,000 Rand a month. And then they tell themselves that it's not too bad because it's going to pay for itself eventually, and it's their investment into that property. The problem with that is the moment that income generating asset is not generating a positive cash flow, it is actually stifling your momentum. It is not creating momentum. So the goal here is to get ready to invest in an income generating asset so that asset can immediately start giving you a positive return or a positive cash flow. So that positive cash flow can then flow back into your reserve account and eventually into your FreeBucks account and create momentum. Because once you get to this level, you now have 3 income streams at least. You have your positive cash flow that you've created from your lifestyle income by paying off all your debt. That is a freedom income. You have a business asset that's creating leveraged income. That is another freedom income. And now you have an asset that generates an income, which is a third income stream. And once you get to investment level again, you just wash, rinse, repeat. And you create what we call a generational wealth spiral. You create a capital asset that's a business asset that creates a capital asset that creates more income, that creates more capital asset, which creates another fixed asset, which creates more income. And it builds that financial spiral. We call it, or I call it, a wealth creation spiral. So guys, we keep doing that until you are ready to retire. So that is the process that we follow. And I'm not saying that every financial coach out there will do the exact same process with you if they're not affiliated with us. And I'm not saying our system is the only or the best system. No, I'm saying it's the best system. I'm not saying it's the only system. But get somebody, get a mentor, get a coach to help you to achieve the goals that you've set out for yourself.
Financially raw, real, authentic wisdom with Lourens Oberholzer from Retire Rich and Happy.